Why, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Voice of the Rings, Zollin's Opinion Playlist. And we're gonna have some fun today, my friends. This is, you guys said it. I asked in the community tab, and 115 of you voted, and almost all of you said yes, you want me to review this article, and you'd like me to tear it apart, which I'm going to do in this episode today. So again, if you're not into the Rings of Power stuff, totally fine, but this particular article, you know my reviews. I'm pretty darn fair with my reviews of Rings of Power, I think, so far. You guys can check them out if you want to check them out. Sweet. Like and subscribe. Really helps me out a lot. But this particular article bothered me because it wasn't even like the problems that I see in the actual show itself. There were like problems with this article. And it's Screen Rant, so, I mean, like, they're occasionally a good article here and there, but usually they're kind of like, you know, cringe or something. But anyway, we're just going to talk about it. I'm going to read through it a little bit, and I will explain some things. Won't make this super duper long. Just have fun. Again, like and subscribe if you would to support the channel. Sweet. We do tons of Lord of the Rings here. I like Rings of Power covering it, but just so you know, that's not all I do on the channel. I do replica reviews. I do guides. I do Lord of the Rings voiceover series and the Lord of the Rings MO, which is fantastic. Totally respects the lore of LOTRO. And Tolkien. The Lord of the Rings Online respects it so much. I'm a big fan of that game. And, you know, all that jazz. We do lots of other Lord of the Rings stuff here, too. But if you did find with this video, sweet. Here we go. All right. Galadriel's replacement is the character the Rings of Power's always needed. Replacement? I don't know about you, but I've been watching Season 2 and been doing live streams, watching the episodes, and reviewing it. Watch parties, not watching the episodes live, because that would be copyright problems. But you know what I'm saying. She's still kind of like one of the main characters in Season 2. So I already didn't know where this article was going when it popped up on my phone. So I was like, let's see what this is. So the Rings of Power, the Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power, presented Galadriel. By the way, I'd like to point out, the Lord of the Rings, Amazon's Rings of Power. I always try to put the word Amazon in there because, just so everybody knows, the term Rings of Power was made by Tolkien. It's a really cool term, but I feel like now we hear the term Rings of Power, and some people really like it, some people super cringe and really don't like it, because maybe they just, you know, I got reviews on that, but we're not going to go into that. But my point is, the term Rings of Power is super freaking awesome, and that was made by Tolkien. Okay, that's my point. All right, the Rings of Power presented Galadriel's, and by the way, this is probably the most ranty you're ever going to get with me, ranting about Screen Rant. I don't really, you know me on this channel. I'm glass half full. I'm really positive kind of guy. I don't really like to go super negative on this channel. We keep it really positive and fun. But I definitely will point stuff out because I want to be a voice not only for voiceovers and my channel, but also a voice for Tolkien and respecting his lore. So, again, here we go. Presenting Galadriel as the main character of Season 1. For better or worse, but the Rings of Power Season 2 offers a different focus, which is paying dividends for the show. Well, this is not entirely true from the statistical data numbers that I've seen, but that's okay. Morfydd Clark was... did I say her name right? I think that's the Galadriel actor's name for Rings of Power, Amazon. Was exceptional as Galadriel. Okay, so some people might thought she was. All right, and I'm not being mean to her. So I've said this before. I don't actually necessarily blame her. I think she's a very good actress. She seems like a good actress. I'm pretty sure it's the screenwriters, okay, the people writing the story. But my big criticism for Season 1, okay, there's a little bit of spoilers in this, guys, but come on, Season 2 is coming out right now. If you didn't see Season 1, you're not going to see it, right? You can watch my reviews if you want. But the Galadriel is angry all the time. Vengeful and angry and very arrogant and very just like constantly rude to people, and just like she just seems like they were trying to act like she was like 20-year-old elf, like super young, you know, she's like a child, right? The way they make her act. And I feel like that's really weird, and they definitely wanted that, because if you read some of the descriptions of the Rings of Power episodes on Amazon, it says a younger and more, you know, I forget the word they use, but like basically like an upstart version of Galadriel, and like, you know, she's angry about, you know, her brother being killed, and like you can tell the writers do want them to act this way. But this idea that like exceptional Galadriel, this is very it's personal opinion. Okay, so I think that's something that really bothered me in Season 1, the constant anger. And I think picking Galadriel as the main character, the protagonist we follow along with in the story, was an excellent idea. Just not the way they completely turned her character's how she acts, almost opposite of what Tolkien says with Galadriel. That's what bothers me. It's not like it's a slight adjustment. It's like it's on its head, right? And some people are like, well, she's younger. Okay, guys, just so you know, the time frame of Rings of Power for how old she is in that versus like the Lord of the Rings movies, right? It's like someone that's like, I always say this, like 65 years old and then 70 years old. Sure, that's a 5-year difference, but it's not like it's a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old person, okay? She should already be wise and gracious leader type traits at this point, okay? So anyway, I don't think she ever was like that either in her lore from what Tolkien says, but that's all right. I know some people argue and they're like, oh, well, Peter Jackson maybe portrayed her differently in the Lord of the Rings movies. No, I think Peter Jackson kind of used what Tolkien wrote for her, how Cate Blanchett did it, right? And again, this isn't me trying to be mean to Clark and be like, oh, which one's better actor for Galadriel? That's not the point. The point is how the writers did it. Did they respect Tolkien's lore and did they follow it, or did they kind of turn on its head with the personality? That does matter. You don't want to change the personality of a character too much from the original. So, and I feel like they did a lot in Rings of Power. So anyway, sorry, we didn't get very far yet, but that was an important one right there. And it would be unwise to begrudge her season 1. So again, I guess I'm being unwise to begrudge her season 1. But yes, no, it wasn't as good as I think it could have been. That's one thing with a lot of Rings of Power Amazon series is that, like, I'm almost more sad about what it could have been, right? With season 1. Sure, there's some good spots, but the fact that I have to, like, look for the good spots, and I'm frustrated about the lore points they changed so drastically, with whether it be personalities. I don't even care about added new characters, guys. I don't care about that. A lot of the new characters are really enjoyable, right? Like, again, they're like their own fantasy story. It's the characters that we already know and love and know exactly how they act and exactly what they, like, would do in a situation. Almost, not maybe not exact, but 90% we would know what they do in a situation, and they just turn on its head. That's what bothers me. Do you guys, does everyone kind of follow that? Even if you're someone who does like, maybe how she was in season 1, I totally respect that if you do. I just personally was frustrated with how angry she is all the time. That's what I didn't like. When she smiles and does a couple of these other things, and I know people make fun of the whole horse slow-mo spot. I get it. But, she does look like she's having fun, right? Sure, you can kind of laugh at it like a meme. I get it. But, at least she was, like, finally had a moment of smiling and having fun riding a horse, which is something in the lore we know. I think pretty sure Galadriel really liked horses, from what I remember in the lore. So that was nice to see. That was one actually bonus to that lore-wise, even if it was a little bit corny in how they slow-moed it, okay? Clark's chemistry with Sauron. Okay, we gotta... Oh, no. I'll read the sentence, then I'll go into it. I'm sorry. Clark's chemistry with Sauron, Clark being Galadriel. Galadriel's chemistry with Sauron, actor Charles Vickers, captured, by the way, he's a good actor. I actually enjoyed his performances. Captured the hearts of 25 million views on the first day of the first season's release of the first 2 episodes via Amazon. Now, they had so many people hoping this was going to be good. Now, they did not get even half in the first season 2 of these numbers, by the way. And the reason is a lot of people aren't as forgiving. Let's put it that way. They get one thing in their mind and they're just done with it, which is fine. That's completely fair and valid, right? Totally. I'm not insulting anyone who has that opinion. I'm a little bit more, I will give people a little bit more chances, right? So, like, again, and as a content creator for Lord of the Rings, I want to review season 2. But I watched, watching it and stuff like that and reviewing it. But a lot of people just aren't going to watch it again after what they were disappointed with season 1, right? And I think there are some good things in season 2 so far that I've enjoyed thoroughly. But there's some stuff that they had to stick to. They got pigeonholed into a season 1, like the Mithril story. Oh, gosh, don't even get me started on that one. That's just ridiculous. There's so many reasons I don't like it, because it messes with the original story, and not just that, it kind of like goes against Tolkien's, like, storytelling with, like, moral, like, oh, the rings of the Mithril super powerful now because, it has evil Belrog essence of a Belrog Maiar in it mixed with a high elf, and that's what makes the good and the evil. They mix to make something stronger. Tolkien would have never mixed good and evil and said it was stronger. He would despise that, okay? So that's why I don't like that. But they were pigeonholed into using that for season 2 with the rings. Problem there, lore-wise. Indeed, their connection drove a lot of the show's opening press, and still drives a lot more interest in the show. In fact, it was I would argue interest in the show as in people like being frustrated by it, though. Like, are they going to make Galadriel and Sauron a thing? Because that's freaky, right? That's where the interest comes from, in my personal opinion. Maybe people who just watched it maybe enjoy it for the drama of that, who don't know the original lore, haven't watched Peter Jackson, they just watched Rings of Power, that's it, for Amazon. One thing, if you are someone who watched that, if you like it, that's great. On this channel, again, I try to be a less freak out way of reviewing things. Again, people can freak out if they want to, or not freak out or whatever. But I am going through the series and talking about the real lore points if you're curious to learn what the original lore was, and then you can still enjoy the fan fiction version of what they changed so drastically or whatever, right? In fact, it was the prototype for Season 2's focal relationship. See, okay, so I haven't actually seen this yet in Season 2, all right? Where, at the time of making this article review, there are 6 episodes out. 2 to go for Season 2. I have not seen this, so this might just be the Screen Rant's opinion or something they heard, but I have not really seen that, but we'll see. We'll see. Technically, I haven't watched the 6th episode. I'm watching it. It came out today, so I'm going to watch it. So maybe I'm totally wrong on that. We'll keep that with a grain of salt. Now that Sauron's true identity has been revealed, Rings of Power Season 2 is free to unleash the villain on its other characters with full transparency. This means viewers get to witness the deception of characters before their very eyes while being in the con, letting the audience get close to Sauron in Season 1, or Annatar, which is good they have him in Season 2, while his identity, he should have been in Season 1, identity was withheld, was a genius move in many ways. Oh, was it now? Was it? Was that a genius move? We all, I mean, for new viewers, maybe, for people who knew the lore, we were like, what the heck's happening? Yeah, I don't know about genius. That's a stretch. Just close enough to being a dangerous betrayal of Tolkien. Just close enough to being a dangerous betrayal of Tolkien's character to be astonishing, and just Tolkien enough to be insightful. Interesting line. Actually interesting here. Just close enough to be a dangerous betrayal of Tolkien's character. Yeah, see, I already think there was a lot of betrayal towards Tolkien's original lore for Annatar in Season 1. Halbrand, not gonna lie, great actor, great character. I actually enjoyed that in Season 1, mostly. Caveat with that, mostly. But the idea that, yeah, I don't know. The idea that it was like a total, like, it was, like, they did, because they didn't talk about Annatar, right? And, like, that, and I'm glad they brought him back. And mind you, I actually enjoyed in Season 2 how they revealed Annatar to Celebrimbor. I thought it was cool. Maybe a little bit dramatic, but it was really well done. And actually, everyone I've talked to so far who's watched the series, that was like a highlight for a lot of people. Where a lot of stuff they didn't like, but that was really cool. Like, and it felt like that was kind of cool. And I was like, okay, so he knew he was Halbrand. So that's how they kind of did it. So basically how they did it from Season 1, right, is Galadriel actually never told Celebrimbor that he was Sauron, which is an insane loophole and an insane blunder by Galadriel. Why would she not tell him when she knew he was... Just don't interact with him anymore, she said. You would tell Celebrimbor, dude, it's Sauron. Don't mess with him, right? So then he's able to turn into Annatar and act like he's some messenger from the Valar to help him create rings. Now, granted, it's kind of how he started as this wise elf guy who came and tricked the elves to make the rings. So, obviously, that kind of is fine, even though it's totally changed from the lore, but it makes sense as a similar way. But that's just weird to me. I don't know. It's weird. All right. I'm getting a little sidetracked here. All right. So Season 2 allows Sauron to embrace his canonical relationship fully, including with Galadriel's replacement character, Celebrimbor. So they're saying Celebrimbor is kind of the new main character for Season 2. I still feel like Galadriel is kind of set as the main character in Season 2 personally. She's in most of it. But I will say, as much as Celebrimbor probably shouldn't look as old as he does, but I don't care about that. He does look correct in the aesthetic look of what he is kind of told as by Tolkien, and this actor does a very good job. Okay, so he's a highlight to me, the Celebrimbor actor. I think he does a really good job. He also made an amazing meme, if you guys remember from the commercial, which he laughed about when he heard about it. So he's a cool guy in that way. So Charles Edwards is portraying the Rings of Power's conflicted Celebrimbor perfectly. Perfectly is a stretch. I think he's doing it well for what they're telling him to do with their fan fiction version of the story. Does that make sense? So he's doing a very good job in feeling like how the character would act, from what I remember reading, in the story of their made fan fiction version of it. That's the caveat to that. So perfectly would imply it was with the original story, I feel like, but so not quite. But he is doing a good job, right? So we got some pictures here you can go through and see. Now, there's one thing that I don't like that they did in season 2 so far is how he lies to Gil-galad. And I think what they should have shown is that Sauron got more into his mind to make that lie if they were going to do that. But Celebrimbor never really got fooled that much in the story. These are great pictures, by the way, that they chose on this article. I got to give them points for that. They're really good. And he gets fooled a little too easy by Sauron in one episode. It feels too fast. Again, a lot of the Rings of Power season 2 for me, again, like season 1, they do a better job of showing travel time, but it still feels so condensed. It's like just crushed all these stories, these massive stories. And, you know, depending on what I see in this episode 6 today, if the Balrog wakes up in Moria and destroys Moria, that's supposed to happen 3,000 years after this whole situation with Sauron and Celebrimbor. So, and it was really cool to see they showed Narvi, the dwarf, and Celebrimbor made a cool door together. You know, the doors of Doran. But it's so fast. They give you like 30 seconds of a scene. That's it. I would like to see them crafting it together and talking about it, the dwarf and Celebrimbor. That would have been cool. I would have liked to see that relationship for at least 5 minutes of one episode. 30 seconds. It's over. Again, there's a lot of pacing things that are bothering me. And again, there's stuff that I like. I'm not trying to be super negative, guys. I'm just telling you my honest feelings after watching the show, right? And I'm trying to be objective in my mind of what I'm expecting because I love Tolkien's lore and want to respect the lore. My mind of, well, okay, take the lore away and just watch it from their fan fiction perspective, right? And then take it all away and just like, what do I think as the show in general as I watch, as a viewer? Like, how do I feel, right? Those are what I'm trying to split apart in my mind. That's hard to do. I'm going to admit it. It's really hard to do. You can't do it perfectly. But that's what I try to do here as a reviewer for any article or show or whatever I'm doing. That's what I attempt to do for you guys. Hopefully it seems, genuine. Because I mean it. It's genuine. I'm trying my best. All right. As the Rings of Power Season 1 finale revealed, Halbrand was actually Sauron. Sauron and Galadriel's relationship didn't contradict lore, but wasn't described in it at length either. Okay, so this, I'm gonna have to say it, is a flat out falsehood. Okay, that is not true. Absolutely contradicts the lore. There's no part in the lore that I remember that Galadriel and Sauron become friendly and have a relationship, and then she's fooled by Sauron in that way. I don't even know if she meets Sauron. So again, the whole idea with Halbrand and her and being the main protagonist kind of going after Sauron, chasing him down because, killed her brother. I don't think that ever happens in the original lore. I don't think so. So that's all made up. So that is not really totally true here. But while the Halbrand persona was an invention of the show, yes, it was. Meanwhile, Sauron's... So this is weird. This is a weird, oxymoron double, counterstatement. Didn't contradict the lore, but wasn't described at length either, while Halbrand's persona was an invention of the show. The relationship of Halbrand and Galadriel is also made up, guys. It's the fan fiction. Halbrand was not in the original story as another persona of Sauron. Do you guys catch how that doesn't make any sense? Okay, all right, moving on. Meanwhile, even if you're someone who didn't watch the original lore, just know that doesn't make any sense because that Halbrand was made up. It's not in Tolkien's lore. How would this be? Okay. It contradicts. Yes, there are things that contradict the lore. Absolutely, because they're different. It doesn't necessarily mean it directly contradicts as in like replaces, which it does a few times, but it's not the original lore. So I guess what they're trying to say is even though it's made up, it's not contradicting the lore because Tolkien didn't really talk about that time frame of Galadriel or something. Maybe that's what they're trying to get at, if I'm being fair to the article writer. Meanwhile, Sauron Season 2 Annatar disguises as pulled straight from the Silmarillion. Yes, which they don't have the rights to the Silmarillion. And his manipulation of Celebrimbor even more so. And no, it's not exact how he... It's not exact, but it's close. It's close to the original lore. This part, this one line. His manipulation of Celebrimbor. It's close because we don't have exact descriptions on how he did. So of course they had to build on that. So it's close to the original lore. This one little part, which is like a few parts of season 2, which I will show in my reviews of all the episodes later too. But this idea, they don't have the rights to this Silmarillion. Did they get rights to some of the Silmarillion? I don't think so. I think this is a show writer who just pulled this out of their sleeve and really he's talked about in the appendices of the Lord of the Rings of the Second Age. Oh well, moving on. That's not that. Oh gosh. Oh god. Guys, okay, I'm going to tell you right now. I know the lore pretty darn well of Lord of the Rings. I'm not the most well-versed of any other person in the world, right? Someday I hope I could be like a Tolkien scholar and I can just have it all memorized, right? Like, that would be great, right? And I have a lot of it. And I have all my books up here and back there, right? And I love it. And I play Lord of the Rings online that supports and respects the lore and stuff. There's other people that obviously probably know more memory of every little detail than I do. But I remember most of it that I've read recently because I've done a lot of studying recently to make sure I remembered correctly for the Rings of Power contrast of what they do for fanfiction. But this idea that the Silmarillion, they don't have the rights to that. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, I'm doing my best for you guys, and I hope someday, as I do this channel longer and longer, now that I do it full time, thank you to my supporters who make that possible, that I will be able to get to the point where I can just be like, I think I'm already at the point where I can answer most generic questions about Lord of the Rings lore, right? And if not, I know where to look in the book to try to find out the exact wording or something. But hopefully in the future, I will get to the point where I can just be like, I feel comfortable being like, yeah, I'm a Tolkien scholar or something, even though, you think you have to technically have it. Like, I think there's actually a job title for a profession with that. So I don't know if that would be the exact title I'd want to use. I don't want to take something I don't have official or something. But, someone who really knows the lore well. And I do know the lore well. That's why I do a Lord of the Rings channel, and I do lore videos too sometimes. So it's like, and again, I'm not trying to say that to be prideful sounding either, mind you. I don't know everything like I'm trying to point out right now, and I do forget things like everybody does sometimes. But in this case, I'm not forgetting any of this. In portraying his conflict, arrogance, and tragedy, Edwards is creating a fascinating character around which the drama can resolve. So they're talking about Celebrimbor. Celebrimbor actor Charles Edwards has his work cut out, balancing Celebrimbor's faith in the Valar, therefore Annatar, with his own pride, and also with the gut instinct and common sense that tells him to stop and think. So again, in their version right now, they think Annatar is from the Valar, okay? And I think he does a pretty good job of this, by the way, to compliment the actor. I think he does a good job of kind of like going, no, we're not going to do that, Annatar. Like they do a good job of that to an extent, but then other times they don't. So I'm like, when we get to that episode with my review, you can go see on the channel. We'll review it. The nuisance is the key to bringing the show's story to life, okay? And it's balancing Edwards is successful in managing to pull off. I'm portraying his conflict, arrogance, and tragedy. Edwards creating a fascinating character. Oh, that's what they just took out to resolve the drama. I mean, I do think his character is well done in Rings of Power for within their version of the story, version being their fan fiction of the story. And just so you guys know, I usually take anything canon in Lord of the Rings Online is written by Tolkien or his son, Christopher Tolkien, with notes. That's canon in my mind. That'll always never change, no matter what people do. Legend is something that respects Tolkien's lore and fits in perfectly, and it like totally makes sense. There's an occasional legend jump in occasionally in Rings of Power, but it's very, very few. But like Lord of the Rings Online, for example, or Peter Jackson's movies with slight adjustments and stuff, a lot of them fit in as legends just perfectly, right, with the original lore, and they make total sense, and they fill in some holes, even though Tolkien didn't leave that many holes. But in bigger time frames, they fill in some holes, right? The Rings of Power is more, to me, there's fan fictions, it's the third level. It's something that is made up. It uses names and locations, but it doesn't really fit the original stories. There's ones that respect the original lore. There's ones that don't respect the original lore. I feel like there's fan fiction of that in both things in Rings of Power. There's definitely some that don't respect. There's some that are fine, that do respect or fit in to an extent. But it's pretty much all a fan fiction from how much they diverted the story. Because they had the rights to some. They don't have rights to some. So, like, you could argue something had to be changed because they didn't have rights to it, right? That's a fair argument. But there's also an argument to make the fact that they had stuff in the appendices of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit that were totally in rights, and they just completely changed it or got rid of it. And that's weird. When they had the stuff to make the story very nice with all with the appendices, and then added on top of that, right? But instead, they removed all of their base material that they did have, left only a tiny little bit, and then built their own base, and then built it up. Which, basically, they're rewriting the story for themselves, right? Their own version. And maybe they think it's better, but I don't necessarily think it's better. Celebrimbor's story is what the Rings of Power should have always been. So is this going straight into another article? I don't know if I want to go to another article. The Lord of the Rings, the Powers, burst onto the scene in 2022. No one quite except Galadriel's revenge arc. No one quite expected Galadriel's revenge arc. No, we didn't. You know why? Because Galadriel's personality is not that in the lore anywhere by Tolkien. That's why no one expected the revenge arc. And her being always angry Galadriel, which is that's my term. She's got angry face. It's like Mr. Potato, Mrs. Potato. Honey, you got your angry face on. You remember the Story story? That's what I feel like, right? So it's really refreshing to me when she does smile or have a humble looking, peaceful face that doesn't look angry or something in some of the parts. I mentioned that in my reviews. All right, Celebrimbor's corruption arc is just as prophesied by the Tolkien Second Age material. It can be a nice surprise when adapted to take the story in an unexpected direction. See, a lot of times they're changing things too because they think they'll make it fun for new audiences. I think they could have made it great for new audiences with the original material and then added in some of their own things to fill in holes that they didn't have. That's what I think we should have done. But I mean, I'm not the one who did it. But again, the proof in the pudding. You can see what people think, right? And that's why I do reviews on my channel. And there was a lot to be said for Galadriel's hunt for Sauron. No, there really wasn't, actually. Not to be mean, but there was really nothing to say about the hunt for Galadriel. It kind of felt irrelevant. Even though there were some cool moments in it, it kind of felt irrelevant. It fit the bill in many ways, despite moving the Second Age narrative away from the Rings of Power. Yeah, a little bit too much, personally, for my taste. They've done a lot of that with, like, some of the side things have been fine, and some of them are like, why? Galadriel and Sauron's multi-layered relationship, which should have never happened, like I already said, now provides an intriguing backdrop for Celebrimbor's downfall, which is what Tolkien's story... So, just so everyone knows, can I just point this out for the fan fiction version of... This is not the original lore, but the fan fiction version. If Celebrimbor is murdered, and I'm the reason all my lore people know the answers to this, so I'm not going to say it here because I don't want to do a big spoiler for this since the season isn't finished. If Celebrimbor dies or something horrible happens with Sauron or anything, it's completely Galadriel's fault. You guys realize that, right? That's not in the original lore, but in this story, it's going to be completely her fault. This lady right here, Galadriel, completely her fault. She didn't tell him that it was Sauron when she knew, before she left to Gil-galad in the end of season 1. She didn't tell Celebrimbor, the leader of Eregion, that the person that's been helping them make the Elven Rings, right, which they shouldn't have made the 3 Elven Rings first anyway. It's a huge lore issue, but whatever. It is Sauron. It's her fault if something bad happens. It's her fault. He's being tricked by Sauron now as Annatar, which is not how Annatar came into the story originally in the lore, because she didn't tell him he was Sauron. So now he thinks he's a Valar messenger from the gods, not an evil, demonic one being Sauron, pretty much, right? Like, oh my gosh. I can't even say how frustrating that is to me in the story. J.K.R. Tolkien's Second Age narrative is really about Sauron's rise and folly of the elves and men for allowing it to happen. Oh, that's a really simplistic way of putting it, but sort of? not entirely. At its core, the story... let's see if this is right. Let me just... Okay. At the core, the story of a cautionary tale about the reaching for life and power beyond what is naturally available. That is the case with the Númenóreans trying to get... But that's not the case with the elves' essence rings. That's made up for rings of power. That's not why the elves were making the rings. They were making the rings to help their... It is being prosperous, as in they wanted to help their realms get better and stronger and learn how to... They were just learning their craft. They were making rings of power to enhance the lives of their elves and human allies and dwarves, and that's what the goal was, and that's what Annatar uses to worm into. And they are kind of irrelevant. They don't even realize it's Sauron, right, when he's helping. But it's like they were just going about their daily lives, learning their craft and getting better and better at it. And he's just really good at it because, again, he's the grandson of Feanor, who is a great craftsman, right? So it's like, I don't know about the core of the story. It's more the core of the Númenórean story with the unfaithful, right? The Kingsmen, which are the ones that try to go and steal. I won't give spoilers for the end of season 2, but in the original lore, they try to steal, right, the immortality from Valinor. That's the original lore. We'll see what they do in season 2. We'll see. As in the novel, The Lord of the Rings. Now that the show is presenting Celebrimbor's conflict, it can start to really lean into Tolkien's message. Better late than never, I guess. But I don't think they can lean fully into Tolkien's message or Tolkien's story because a lot of the core things have been changed of the original story. You might be able to bend it to your will to an extent, the story, to get it closer to what Tolkien wrote in a lore part. But unfortunately, since they've already made the foundation, so they took out so much of the lore they had rights to, that I don't know how they're going to get to that point. But we'll see. Maybe that'll be some good episodes. I did enjoy one of the episodes in Season 2 so far, at the 5 I've seen since this video. Life is scarred without extending it unnaturally. Celebrimbor is now embodying the key themes of the source material more than ever in The Lord of the Rings of Power by Amazon, providing himself a worthy Galadriel replacement. So it's an interesting article to say that he's kind of like the replacement for Galadriel, but it's a very interesting argument. I definitely think I enjoy him far more as a character than Galadriel's version in The Rings of Power. And again, I'm not trying to slight the actors, okay? I'm not going after the actors at all, okay? I'm talking about the showrunners and how they have the actors portray the character from the original lore. Clearly, she was told to act more vengefully, anger. She wants to avenge her brother. She's angry at the king. She's angry at all these people, and then now she's angry to find out she was tricked by Halbrand. It's just too much for me personally. But overall, what do you guys think? Was that a good breakdown of the article? Did you enjoy my thoughts? You didn't, that's fine. You can dislike the video or like the video. That's totally up to you. Appreciate the engagement either way. Leave a comment. Love to hear your opinions. Thank you, by the way, to my wonderful patrons. Thank you, Reb, for being a royal guard, supporting the channel. That means so much, my friend. Thank you, thank you. I do a lot of other stuff on the channel, too, besides Rings of Power, like I said at the beginning. Feel free to check out my other playlists. My next videos will be popping up there. If you click them, it helps with the algorithm. If you want to help out that way. And subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next ones. Baruch Hazan Kuzan, and you stay happy. Have a great and wonderful day in Middle-earth. And whether you love it or don't like it, the Rings of Power, I hope you enjoy yourself. Have either way in your day in Middle-earth. Because we are very blessed with Tolkien's wonderful world in Middle-earth. And that's what we do here on this channel. Alright, have a great and wonderful day in Middle-earth. And hopefully that was a well-done review. I'll see you in the next ones, my friends. Thank you. See ya.